Hey everyone, and thanks very much for joining us for another Challenge Circuit Design Contest round on PGA Tour 2K23. This time we're heading off to Rusty Colt Golf Club by Geordieboy 85. He's bitten off quite a big challenge with this. He's gone completely bunkerless um, as one of his contest elements, which is something I've not really tried. It does remove kind of one of your big weapons as a course designer. Bunkers do a lot of heavy lifting visually and can really inform kind of the strategy of the holes. So we'll see how he's managed to cope with that sort of handicap. If we zoom out and take a look at the plot, we've got some dramatic elevation change, it looks. Got some coastal holes, so hopefully some really nice looking, pretty dramatic holes over there as well. And I'm kind of getting, with the oceans of green, uh, or the islands of green popping up in this ocean of desert, getting kind of Tara Iti sort of vibes. But obviously, this is desert terrain rather than sand, rather than dunes. Um, but it looks cool. The planting looks. I have played this course before. There are some really strong looks where the native areas really shine. There's some bits where it doesn't quite make sense to me. I feel a lot of these stones that are just kind of peppered around don't make a lot of sense in terms of I feel like during the course construction process they'd have probably just been dug up and removed. And these areas of heavy rough that have been painted on, there's a couple of brushes that you can use that have a really soft edge that kind of feather the grass color into this native color a little bit better rather than this kind of firm edge of just contrast. But onto the whole, we have, if we take on like an aggressive drive down the left, we get this sort of broken ground, and possibly a worse angle in. Like this can kick our ball away and further down this tier. Um, Whereas if we take on a drive to the sort of plateau on the right, we get maybe a slightly better view of the green from a bit of a higher platform. Um, and we get maybe a better angle in if we can kind of come in sort of around this shoulder. But more importantly, we get a fairly flat lie. The only thing is we've got to hit a fairly good one to get to that flat spot, especially into the wind. So I'm going to kind of play for the right side of the fairway and maybe hit that one a little bit fast, like I usually do. Yeah, that's kind of gone pretty much exactly to plan. So a pretty good drive leaves me a wedge off a slightly side hill lie and a bit of a right to left wind, so maybe a chance to kind of draw one in a bit close and avoid that contour in front of the pin. And yeah, that's as good as I could have hoped for, and should be starting around with a birdie. That sort of wild planting over the back of the green there looks really nice. Big fan of that. Especially that dead tree just poking its way up through some kind of dense undergrowth. These kind of native areas is what I was mentioning. I really like. Um, those rocks make a lot more sense. They're kind of off the beaten track. I can imagine that an architect would have come in and gone, "Yeah, don't need to do anything with that." But like this one, your green stuff would just pick it up and chuck it away. I think. I've left a little bit to be desired with that swing, but hopefully can make up and down. Yeah, reasonable chip. Not too much to say about that hole. It was a decent par three. Kind of just testing your execution. If you can hit a good tee shot, then maybe you can make a birdie. But par's usually a reasonably good score on a kind of mid to long par three. Right, if we weren't into the wind, we'd have a chance of carrying this kind of ravine area. Again, natural native planting looks pretty good there. Um, and we'd maybe have an angle at the green. Into the wind, we've kind of got to play more for this side of the fairway, where we're going to be blinded. And again, this is probably going to kick us down and away from the green. So maybe we're going to have to be wary of that if we're in a position to go for the green in 2. Oh, that's going to have to get lucky. No, just run into the heavy rough. So maybe that's worth considering. I've mentioned it on a couple of courses before that if we're looking for CC difficulty, could be worth considering a light rough cut around the fairway, um, just to kind of give these sort of narrow misses a little bit more forgiveness. But that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule because that was a terrible shot and now I'm punished for it. Chance to still sort of make up and down and make a score. So that's kind of a difficulty in kind of how do you make the holes play. Oh, it's just run away. Coming out of the rough was going to be difficult to hold out. You don't get as much spin. Um, but even so, I've hit kind of 3 pretty poor shots. Not the best chip either, and I've still made par. Um, Obviously, par fives tend to play as the easiest holes on any given course, especially in the game. So I have kind of dropped at least a portion of a shot to the field there by not playing that hole very well. So yeah, kind of punished, but a little bit quick. Not the best swing. This hole feels a little bit filler. If we just go back to the tee quickly, kind of, there's not a great deal going on. Is that the? Yeah, that's the tee box. I like this side visually. We've got a bit of native area again. This feels quite empty. We're a little bit away from the planting here. We've got absolutely nothing going on here, and it's just kind of an uphill par 4 with obviously with no bunkers, without really any trouble. Um, just kind of feels like it's existing to get us up the hill a bit, maybe for the next hole. Go close. Oh, nice. A little bit long of the pin, so I've got a tricky downhill putt. So there's a little bit of defence there. There's not a lot of wiggle room to leave yourself an uphill putt here. A very tentative putt there, but found, well, it should make par at least. Hopefully we make use of kind of some higher ground now, and yeah, we do pretty much instantly. This is a much more interesting view. Kind of little bits of planting poking their heads in front of the tee. Again, maybe a bit empty down here and in here. I think that's in fact that's the same area that I've just pointed out. So if we filled that in, it would do like it would work twice as hard because we get a bit of visual interest from this tee and then a bit more from back here maybe. But I can see why you'd also leave it open to have a view of this lake. So into the wind, kind of pinched at driver distance, but we do want to kind of leave ourselves a shorter shot in because the screen slopes front to back. We've already had a hard enough time holding greens once or twice in the round already. So we want to have a short shot in, sort of a wedge in hand to kind of take this slope out of the equation and be able to sort of hold our shot. If we're coming in with a longer iron and kind of trying to bounce it in along, it's going to be difficult to get the distance right and quite easy to run long and be chipping from back here. So kind of got to take driver on. Not sure I reached the choke point anyway into the wind. Quite a long way downhill, so yeah, I do just about reach it, but hit it pretty well. Played for that fast quite nicely. And hopefully the wind will hold this up just a touch. A little bit long, just about sticks on the right tier though, so we have a birdie putt. Kind of a reward for the aggressive drive that came off that time. I've left it short. Oh no, it did just about trickle in, so a good birdie. Now we have an interesting choice with the drive here. Like, how much do we want to go? We kind of taper to a bit of a point here, especially water on the right hand side, kind of between the green and the fairway. So if we bail out left, we're kind of taking the water out of play, but then we're coming in from further out of the heavy rough. Do we want to lay back? It's not the longest hole, and then that's going to leave us kind of a mid-iron into a fairly short green. This is going to repel shots at the front. Maybe this is going to help us out a little bit. So I feel like with the wind getting up, maybe hitting hybrid is probably a decent play. Maybe even 4-iron back here. Let's see. Let's hit hybrid. A little bit fast, but the wind pushing us back into the middle of the fairway. And yeah, mid-iron, 7-iron, maybe a 6-iron up the hill. We can hopefully use this slope to get us a bit close. We have kind of left ourselves coming in over this this bump, but we'd probably be coming in over that from kind of wherever we hit our drive to this pin. Maybe to a pin here, that's more defending against kind of the defensive drive, like I've just hit, and a bigger drive means that we can use this as a bit of a backstop. So that could be interesting how that impacts those shots. Is that all right? Ah, that's unfortunate. It's just held up. Not too far off from what I was trying to do. Now, tricky-ish chip that hopefully won't run away from me too far. Hey. So not punished too much for my safe play. Wasn't the easiest birdie in the end, especially with having to chip in. I felt like I did a pretty good approach. This is a fairly tight pin as well. We get a bit of help from this bank on the left. Short par 3, so I don't mind the pin being kind of tucked. We could always play for the middle of the green and probably just 2-putt up this tier. But 115-yard hole, I feel like I should be giving myself a decent chance at birdie. Also note, this looks a lot better in my opinion, up here and in here, where it's just a bit more full, a bit more of a lived-in environment. Oh, the wind's pushed that on further than I expected. So, half a sniff at birdie, a little bit of a breaky putt. Just coast it up there and try and make my par. Gave it a bit too much, but can roll this one back in. Keep the bogeys off the scorecard. It's my main goal with these videos. Try not to look too bad at the game. Right, so we have a chance to take on another one of these native areas maybe. With the wind at our back, we can open our shoulders and go for one. It's a similar kind of problem with the previous sort of uphill par 4 that we had, where there's not a great deal going on. We don't get a huge kind of variety of angles into this green. There's not a great deal of reward other than the distance for taking it over this bit. If we just hit it far, but kind of more on a more safe line, there's not a lot in it between the lines here, I don't think. So I'm just going to kind of play for the right half of the fairway and probably hit that little fast one again. Or very fast and hook it into the middle of the fairway at the very least. So a longer shot than I'd have liked coming into this. But at least it's from the short grass. Middle of the green, not terrible. Left myself a lot to do with that approach. But yeah, a little bit kind of featureless that I potentially am making a birdie from such a poor tee shot. I might have done if I gave it half a chance, but you miss 100% of the putts that you leave short. But made the par at the very least. Now onto a par 5 that's got, again, we're playing downhill, so we've got a bit more to work with visually, a bit more drama, nice view of the coastline, and a nice long hole that I'm lucky enough to have the wind at my back. So maybe we can look at going 4 in 2. But we've got a bit more going on here, and these are definitely the stronger holes so far where we're playing downhill. And we get like a nice view of the hole opening out in front of us. We've got kind of trouble on sort of 3 sides of the green. Well, maybe this is a bit far back to be considered kind of trouble fronting the green, especially with the wind at our back. We've hit quite a big drive. But definitely if we hit that fast one again, we're in trouble here. If we hit a slow one or a push one, we're in trouble down here. So we do have that to consider. I feel like with this drive, we don't have a lot of reason not to go for it. We've got a pretty flat lie. And if we're laying up here, it's just a smaller target area as it is here, basically. So we might as well go for it. Because if I hit a bad shot playing safe, I'd be in just as much trouble as if I hit a bad shot going for it here. So kind of the risk versus reward. The risk, the reward outweighs the risk, I think. But maybe it's a different story if we play into the wind. And if I hit that really fast one, like I was worried that I was going to. But see, if I'd have hit that, maybe not if I'd have hit that exact one, playing for here, but if I'd have hit a push or a slow and I'm in here, I'm in a similar situation. So I've hit a terrible shot, to be fair there. So deserve the punishment. But I'm not sure the layup would have really saved me. No, horrible shot again. So got to pull something out of the bag now to keep those bogeys off the card, especially on the par fives. Oh, got away from me a bit. I've played both the par fives of the round very averagely so far. Just slides on by. So it's an interesting kind of hazard, that a very kind of side hill rough lie. Probably shouldn't have found myself in it. Did play that particularly badly to get in there, but it was punishing once I was in there. Kind of a different sort of water hazard to what we had on the previous hole, or the previous water hole. A little bit of like a rocky kind of, I suppose, yeah, like a rock pool. It looks interesting. Definitely kind of gives us something to challenge on the left side, but I'm not sure we get much of a benefit from challenging it. If we play to the right, we're obviously maybe risk running out of fairway here, but probably not into this wind. But we can kind of avoid coming in over this slope so much. Um, Maybe if the pin's at the back, even so, if the pin's at the back, actually coming in from this side is better because hopefully it will kind of corral up all round and get it close. So we'll see. We kind of want to play for, yeah, just this area of the fairway. I'm just going to take a little bit off this drive. Taken quite a lot off the drive, but didn't want to hit it much further. That's left me probably a 4-iron into this wind. Maybe take a little bit off this as well. Should have been 5-iron. The slope helps me out though, so well, it's helped me out a lot. I was definitely right to hit 4-iron in hindsight. So that's kind of a benefit that I wouldn't necessarily have got from taking on the water. So in a way, the strategy of the hole is kind of backwards there. Nearly missed that part. Pushed the pants off of it. This uphill hole's got a little bit more visual interest to it than the previous ones did. I think maybe some of the native area again here, like a little bit framed by this dead tree, and the fairway kind of snakes its way up rather than just playing straight. What do we want to do? This side of the fairway we've got a slightly less significant uphill shot to the green. Here we're coming in a bit more steep, but there's not a great deal of difference between the two angles in. That's something that's quite difficult to do when we're not using bunkers. They can like really exaggerate the strategy of a hole quite easily. Into the wind, up the hill, but we don't want to be long because we're going to collect here. So probably just take a little bit off a sand wedge and try and hold at the very worst the middle of the green. That's pretty good. So roll this in, back to back. So sometimes I can play this game, just sometimes I can't. Another par 5. Hopefully I can improve my scoring average. First sort of properly coastal hole. I know we got some glimpses of it, especially on the 9th, but I'd probably like the fairway to come out closer to the edge and to just use the coast maybe a bit more, kind of might be a bit more sort of obvious what we're doing if we get the coast involved there. But why would I want to challenge the coast? Do I get a better angle in? Not really. Might be pitching on this slope and shooting away. Whereas if I come in from this side, it could kind of help balls filter round. From this side, yeah, there's not a lot in it, so probably just kind of play for the middle of the fairway and let the wind push it back to the right side and hope I don't hit a super fast one. So yeah, a little bit more left side of the fairway than is possibly ideal, but a long way uphill. Does a hybrid get up it, or do I need to? I suppose we have the option of laying up here and then having. Then the pitch kind of runs away from us. We're probably hitting a partial pitch and possibly having a hard time fighting against this slope. Um, so I could go for it with a 3-wood and kind of make sure that I get over it. I think that's the plan. Yeah, a little bit long, but collecting back here. This is probably a better place to be than hitting that sort of partial pitch that I would have been worried about. Because I've got a good chance of making up and down for birdie. Not the best chip, didn't really give it a chance, but can roll the putt in at least and get back to level par for the par 5s. Have made a bit of a hash of them, but 3 in a row. Turning it on a little. Ooh, long par 3, really dramatic view of the sea out over there. I quite like these sort of rocky bits as well. Could maybe get the new assets involved with some of those rocks to like really jazz it up. But this may well have been published before they were available, so uh, it looks perfectly good as it is. Kind of maybe between clubs as well, into the wind. I would be wary of such a long par 3 with a green that's sloping front to back again. It's going to be incredibly difficult to hold. Like we do have a bit of a helping slope to maybe hold for a pin in here, but I would just be wary that there's a very real chance that we end up kind of in here putting up and having an absolute nightmare for a shot for like the the level of difficulty that this shot is probably quite high. So kind of want to give options for like a slightly less than perfect um, shot. Just taking a little bit off it. Yeah, don't really have much of a chance to hold that. So kind of as good as I can hope for collecting in there. Just hope for a 2-putt. Left a fair bit of chicken on this boat. But I really struggle to see how I'm going to make a birdie on that hole. So I kind of am just playing for a par. And that's not necessarily the most exciting way to play the game because if I'm playing safe, I should really be able to make pars on most of the holes. Just hit it on or near the green. I feel like it's all right to provide a challenge, but you kind of have to provide a bit of a scoring opportunity, I feel, as well. So what do we want to do here? Fairway pinches at like kind of where we might be running out to, but it's a long way downhill, so we could hit a real monster drive. But then we're kind of leaving ourselves potentially open for running long of this pin with a pitch. Or we could come in from this direction and have a bit of a backstop and maybe have a full shot in. So I'm kind of going to just try and take some of the trouble out of play. Yeah, I can hit this pretty safely. Well, I hope I can. I hope I haven't overhit that. Maybe I should have hit a hybrid. No, definitely not overhit that. Um, Maybe just try and eke out a little bit of extra yardage from this sand wedge. I played that pretty well. Thought my way through that hole for a reasonable chance at birdie. I didn't really ever commit to that line, but um, a pretty safe par. Kind of a reward for playing fairly safe. Didn't really get too aggressive, didn't bite off too much. We got a nice, like, kind of fleshed out environment again. Plantings where it's kind of more dense, I feel is really shining, um, creating a really cool environment. Like this hill, very well planted, like looks like something that would exist. Um, don't have too much of an example around here. Maybe around the path, this looks a bit kind of just dead and featureless. But there has been points on the round where I would have liked more planting to get involved. A little bit fast, but taking a fairly aggressive line. The wind's pushed us back into the middle of the fairway. I feel like we've had quite a lot of sort of mid-length par fours, but they've been done fairly well in terms of elevation changes. That I haven't really had the same clubs in too many times. Oh, that's not a great shot. Going to get away with it at the very least. Uh, and a chance to make up and down. Oh, nearly hold it. Wow, that was awful. It happens. Oh, a nice dramatic view of a potentially drivable hole with this wind. Do I want to go for it? I mean, it's really testing my ego because I do want to just hit a big drive with the wind and try and chase it down onto the green. But definitely don't want to be long because we're dropping down into here. And with the pin on this side, um, I mean, I don't want to leave myself here because I'm putting across or chipping on the green across an awkward little shoulder. Um, and I'm not sure it's collecting down here. I think if it gets down this tier, it might run off and challenge and sort of get close to the water. So probably just want to play kind of a long way back. Try and leave myself a full shot in. Get a good bounce out the rough. So hopefully I've been rewarded for a sensible play. Well, it might have been if I had hit a better wedge, but at least I'm on the green and should really make four. And going for that green, I feel you can only really go for it in very specific circumstances. Um, I basically with a big tailwind like I've got. I'm not sure I would get a lot of mileage out going for it. I feel like that's bringing a big number into play without a lot of chance of. That's kind of possibly weighted too heavily in the risk side of the equation rather than the reward. Um, but I suppose it depends. You are asking the question. Right, a nice little par three again, kind of cool ocean view, nice kind of native area again. Um, I feel like the rocks really contribute when they're in here and planted around. I think that looks really good. Oh, come on, wind, help me out. Found the green at the very least. Not the best shot. But hopefully you can roll another putt up close. Not all that close. Save the par at the very least. And on to a par 5 finishing hole. Yeah, so again, there's only very specific circumstances that I would be able to take this on. Luckily enough, I'm playing in those circumstances. If I was playing into the wind at all, I'm never getting it over this water. And so I'm just playing down here. But I can really shorten the route into the green by taking this aggressive line on. Uh, if I hit say 350 out to the middle of the fairway on the left, I've got 250 left in. If I hit 350 to the middle of this fairway on the right, I've taken off 70 yards from the hole. So that's pretty like bang on kind of risk reward. But I have got to hit a good one because I'm coming over the water and the water is sort of protecting a fast miss, which is normally my miss. But no, I've hit that pretty much perfectly. And an absolute bomb to finish the day. And it's left me a wedge into a par 5. So good chance to finish with a birdie and get my round some semblance of respectability. Nice little view of the clubhouse, kind of poking its head out round the corner, and a good approach. So yeah, that's a good hole, especially in those wind conditions. And to finish with an eagle, fantastic. Kind of brought my par 5s back in line with what I'd be hoping for. I'd just be aware that if the wind was playing the other way, or even like a crosswind, for anyone but the biggest of drivers, that's not really an option. And you'd like that risk reward option to be there kind of all the time. But thanks very much for a pretty cool course. Done really well with kind of handling the bunkerless element. Does make life quite difficult to take that challenge on, but I thought it'd been done pretty well. Um, I know you'd taken on the drivable par 4 as a contest element, and I'm not sure that I would really consider 16 to be drivable. Um, but aside from that, I thought it was a really cool course. Really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to catch you guys in the future.